You're listening to CX Passport, the show about creating great customer experiences with a dash of travel talk. Each episode, we'll talk with our guest about great CX, travel, and just like the best journeys, explore new directions we never anticipated. I'm your host, Rick Denton. I believe the best meals are served outside and require a passport. Let's get going. Think of a time you've been able to work with someone really interesting. No, I mean really interesting. Someone who consistently brings a new perspective, a novel way of thinking, and a suite of fascinating experiences. Today's guest, Cliff Crosbie of Emrays, is one of those people for me. Cliff and I met when working on a client in the Boston region of the US, and from day one, he's impressed me. There we were focused on transforming the in-store retail experience for the client. Cliff's direction and insight there were amazing. This guy knows his customer experience, especially retail customer experience. Maybe it's that soothing Scottish voice and accent that capture me, but it's more likely the incredible experiences Apple, Nokia, and anybody know Niketown? How about Niketown in London? Yeah, Cliff was instrumental in getting that launch, driving all aspects of the retail customer experience from physical to human to digital CX. This doesn't even begin to mention his other businesses and the highly intelligent approaches to elements of team culture or truly advanced approaches to video algorithms and several other ventures. Wow. Cliff, welcome to CX Passport.
Thanks, Rick. Good to be here.
Well, Cliff, I'm looking forward to this. So you've been with global brands like Ikea, Nokia, and Nike. You've been a part of opening stores with those brands all over the world. What did you see as the different CX expectations across those cultures?
You know, it's a big question all the time with brands now when they talk about, you used to have back in the day with Nokia that everyone thought every country was different. And everyone would try and gear the experience to a particular country. You know, things are done this way in my country. And, you know, the truth is, especially with Apple, that the global formats roll out really well. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you don't need to change anything from physical appearance. In fact, it's dangerous to do so because the brands are so recognizable as brands.
Right.
But what you do have to do, and the very subtle things you have to do, is more in that direct customer experience in the store. So any kind of local culture, person-to-person interaction has to, you know, and naturally does follow the local culture. So the only things we used to adjust a lot, especially when I'm thinking Nike as well, was just, you know, you couldn't get away with the Niketown, have a nice day greeting all the time in some of the other countries where people are far more reserved.
Right.
So,
right.
You know, you didn't kind of do that Disney at the door in London. We kind of tried it, but it didn't go down too well. And, you know, you then come up with, what is the locally acceptable? Is it just saying hi or whatever, you know, but all these things. So more in the people to people part, not so much in anything to do with the formats or that kind of thing.
So that makes a lot of sense to me that it would be at that human level. And so how do you actually get to understand that from a global perspective? You as one person, but then as a team, you know, I'm thinking of even Ikea, for example. How did you dig into that with the Ikea understanding? How did you learn from customers?
Well, Ikea, I think, you know, the biggest challenge I faced in Ikea, and I worked and met in quite a few countries with Ikea, especially over Europe at first. But then I moved to Japan. And Japan in particular with Ikea was experiencing quite a challenge at that time. And that is, if you take anywhere on the planet that is going to be quite strongly culturally different, then I think Japan probably hits about the top of the list.
All
you
right.
know? And for me, because they do live life in quite a, and I say that from living there for a few years, you know, that it's a different culture to the rest of the world, and not a lot of people worldwide have kind of lived there. They may have gone holiday there, but it's a different place to live, and there's very clear things. And Ikea at that time were not doing so well in Japan. And I was brought on to help as part of that, to come in and look at sales in Japan and see what we could do to help it. They were incredibly busy. It wasn't a problem of lack of customers. The store at Yokohama, south of Tokyo, I think is 6.5 million visitors a year, something like that. So it's kind of on par with any good theme park or something like that, you know. But that is exactly what we kind of found out it was. So lots and lots of Japanese going there, kind of looking at all the funny Swedish rooms, eating the Swedish meatballs because they love that stuff, and buying some nice kawaii object downstairs in the market hall before they left. But we found out pretty quickly through a lot of research that it was actually like the #1 dating place in Tokyo at that time, because it was kind of a nice place to take your new friend, partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. And you could go along there. It was quite cheap date, if you like. Walk around, have a look at all the furniture. Imagine living in these homes, go and have something nice to eat, and then leave. You know, so it was a nice place to just go and get a very cheap first date. I guess if you weren't sure, that was the place to go. But on social media, we found it was #1. And so, you know, cutting a long story short there, it meant we had to really dig into what we called life at home in Japan, because we knew there was something totally different about the way people were living, the fact that they were not taking up Japanese furniture, and or sorry, IKEA furniture in Japan. And, you know, we had a lot of discussions about, should we buy more futons? Should we do more furniture for tatami rooms and all this kind of thing? But my thought was, no, it's not what we have in here. It's more how we show people how to use that furniture in their homes. So, you know, we did a lot of research into, I visited, I think it was over 100 homes in Japan. It was definitely over 100.
Wow.
And we just went in, you know, we either pretended we were looking for a place to buy, or we just asked people directly if they would show us their home, which the Japanese don't like. You know? So you had to kind of fake a lot of that stuff. And we went in everything from houses to apartments, big apartments, although there's not that many big ones, and masses of these small apartments, and kind of looked at all the issues these people have. And it comes down to the country, you know, earthquakes and lack of space and all these kind of things that kind of put the way people live at home in Japan differently to the rest of the world. But what we did in the short term on the customer experience was we took Yokohama store and we rebuilt the showroom completely Japanese. So Japanese room sets, all the Japanese challenges of beams for earthquakes and tatami rooms and small kitchens and all these things they use. And so took what that person's life at home experience was going to be and took it into the showroom. And that was transformational, along with everything else we discovered about how people in Japan don't like DIY, so they won't put things together themselves. They maybe don't have tools to do it, you know?
Right.
And they want things delivered because a lot of people, especially in Tokyo, don't have cars and all these things. But when we put that whole package together, including sort of assembly services and all these kind of things, it just transformed the business, because suddenly it was still IKEA. It was exactly the same product, but all we'd done was enhance the service and show them how to use it in their homes. And that just makes all the difference.
I mean, it's an oft-repeated phrase, but it's sort of a brilliant application of it is go understand your customer. And you took that to the extreme. Get in the customer's house, go get into their life, and then use your retail experience to be an expression of what that life is. I do have a bit of a chuckle here in the US. There's sort of a feeling that IKEA is where relationships go to die, because usually people enter as a couple and then they break up by the time they've exited. There's actually a 30 Rock episode that focuses on that theme. So it's interesting for me to hear the reverse, that it's actually a place for dates.
There's the trick, Rick. It seems to be okay to go there on a date as long as you don't buy anything. That's the rub.
Very true. But listening to your customer helped transform that in IKEA, and that makes so much sense. It clearly is the path forward. So I know we talked about this wealth of experience, kind of stepping out of just pure retail for a second. And I know that one of your current ventures is this real estate company. It's focused on university student real estate. Now, I can tell you this, my university living experiences were nothing to rave about. In fact, my freshman dorm was actually officially condemned, but the university convinced the city to keep it open one more year, my last year. So I've had some less than positive experiences, but I know you're trying to change that. Share a little bit about how you're trying to change things there.
Yeah, so it's something, I find hospitality and retail pretty close, because it's all about customer experience. And
Right.
I really started off back in the day originally in hospitality. So that's always been close to my heart as well. But in this particular opportunity, where I'm working with a startup company, I'm one of the co-founders. We have a number of properties and we rent them out to students. And there's in a lot of countries that is seen as some kind of easy opportunity from a landlord just to get a bunch of young people in, charge them some crazy rent, and fill the house with some crappy old furniture, and these guys will be happy. And it's kind of, I think it's very different. Now a lot of the student age people are pretty particular about what they want. So we kind of looked at what that experience was. We talked to a lot of students that were already staying in some of the properties we had. And, very simple things we knew we had to do really quickly, like awesome Wi-Fi, right?
Oh, yeah, right.
So you kind of think of the basics. If you ask them, what is the most important thing? It's Wi-Fi.
Forget
right?
furniture. I don't need that. I don't need running water. Just give me Wi-Fi.
Yeah, but furniture comes up pretty quick, because give me a good bed, give me a really good bed. Give me a really good place to work, The rest of the stuff I'm not so bothered about, as long as it's clean, tidy, all these kind of things. So we took these. And then the other thing that we heard a lot was about community. I come into a country, I'm not connected. I have the students that I maybe have in my class, but I kind of want to understand a bit about the locality and where I'm staying and all these kind of things. So that's really what we've been doing. We've just been building a kind of community of the people that stay with us. And we've just been making sure the basic needs of a student, i.e. desk, Wi-Fi, good bed, all these kind of things are covered. Plus fun, making sure they're all introduced, come around for a beer after COVID. And, kind of
important caveat,
get people feeling good. Yeah, and just telling them about the country and educating them and making sure that their kind of life in the Netherlands is something they remember going forward. So
and that's
it's a very different approach.
I like where you're going with that. And I think that's important. I didn't mention that, right? I'm talking to you where you're sitting there in the Netherlands right now. And the Netherlands certainly is a hub for the globe, right? Folks have for centuries have come to the Netherlands. And so there's always been kind of a global perspective. And I would imagine that your customer, your student customer, is a part of that global diversity spectrum as well. So how do you make sure that you and your team are students, pun intended, of that diversity of a customer base?
Well, we have to do the same thing. So we have students from all over Asia, America, all over Europe come into here, and our team is completely the same. And we run a lot of programs for students as well to come into the business and help us out as well. So we're kind of mixing it up all the time. And I'm the oldest one in there by a long, long, long way.
We don't put age in the show notes. No one needs to know.
Everyone else is by far in the student market, I would say. So we've kind of got a lot of people that are not long out of being students themselves as well. So people that remember it want to improve that experience, but from all over the world. So, and that's the great thing about the Netherlands. I think it is such a mix of all cultures in this country anyway. So it's a country, as you say, that's very used to global travelers and welcoming people here. And we just take the time with the people and make sure we meet their needs. And, it's a very rewarding kind of business to be in, I think, because you're basically giving people a home away from home for a good 6 months, year, in some cases 2-3 years. And, it needs to feel like a home away from home. So it's quite a nice thing to do for people. So yeah, it's and that's where it is. And that business, I think for me, working with the students is the kind of nicest thing about it. I've always thought of things like, I call it reverse mentorship. So I was into that company because a lot of young guys wanted to learn from me. Mm-hmm. But the reverse mentorship is they don't realize how much they teach me. And I love that connection with them, because you have to spend your whole life always learning. And that for me has been is the reason why I work with these guys, but also the reason that I'm so passionate about customer experience, because that's the best way it works.
little change of pace here, Cliff. With the Netherlands being so known for international travel, sometimes folks are coming from a long way away. You and I have done some traveling in our days. So sometimes it's nice to relax. So join me here in that first class lounge. We'll move quickly here and hopefully have a little bit of fun. What is a dream travel location from your past?
From the past, that's easy. We enjoyed Bali a couple of times, and we'll get back there for sure.
Boy, I don't feel like I need to ask the follow up here, but yeah, Bali, I think we know why, but tell me, I've never been. It just looks so beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful, peaceful, great food, just a beautiful place.
Brilliant.
Chill out.
Well, with that one in the past, what is a dream travel location you've not been to yet?
I think it probably is New Zealand, and just because I've not been there, and I think for the nature.
Yeah.
And then the other one, my wife has never been to India, and she would love to go to India.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been there many, many times, but not so much as a tourist. And
right.
I would love to go there as a tourist. And I think that's the main area.
Yeah, I've been there too. My only travels to India have been business, and it would be nice to be just the true tourist. Now, it's interesting. You mentioned New Zealand. That has come up quite a bit, and I think it's because I talked to a lot of folks for whom New Zealand is a long way away, and it's been interesting when I've talked to Australians on this podcast that for them places like Fiji and Bali are as easy to get to as it might be for you to get to the coast of Spain, and these are bucket trips to us. So we think of New Zealand as a bucket trip, and for them it's just a little hop across the water. So it is interesting how your location presents a perspective on what your dream location can be. What is a favorite thing of yours to eat?
Well, that's that's lined up with the last question because it's Indian food.
Okay.
I've worked with a lot of Indians. I have a lot of Indian friends. I've had some amazing Indian, especially the vegetarian food, I have to say. It's just unbelievable.
Nice.
So spice is good.
I've made another mistake. So I've done this now a couple times that I record this podcast right around lunchtime here in the US. And every time we get to that question, my stomach starts rumbling. So might need to be a little Indian food here for lunch. I'm liking that. So, but on the flip side, what is a thing your parents forced you to eat, but you hated as a kid?
Probably mushrooms more than anything. My father loved them and I hated them as a kid, and yet now I love them. So it's but at the time it was it wasn't good. But now I don't think there's anything I don't like. So
it is funny how tastes evolve. You are not the first guest to say I disliked X and now I enjoy that same food. But I can see the kid looking at a mushroom going, "No, I'm not eating that."
No, it doesn't look good.
Not including your phone. What is one travel item you will not leave home without?
That's pretty easy for me because I always take a sketch pad. And I loved drawing as a kid. I've always loved drawing. And everywhere I go, when I get some peace and quiet, I always have a sketch pad, some pencils, and it's just a great thing to get off a computer and get onto something that's real in your hand, and so I take that everywhere.
Cliff, I know we talked about retail customer experience a little bit earlier, and I know it's an oft repeated phrase that retail isn't dead, but boring retail is. So how do you establish a vision of customer experience and then execute it in the retail space so that the brand is sort of elevating beyond dead and boring retail?
Well, you've got to have a good brand in the first place. I think that's
right.
One of the things. So if your product's already boring, then you're probably gone. So that's part of it. But then beyond that, it's like I mentioned earlier on, I think it's people. And, a lot of people ask me all the time about Niketown in London because we recruited the team we did for there. We went a very different way. Mm-hmm. And we didn't recruit anyone based on retail experience. We recruited them basically on passion for sport. All right. And also whether they had the attitude. So everything was about attitude, because all the skills of running a retail store or working in a retail store, we knew we could teach. Mm-hmm. And all the kind of knowledge about product, we knew we could teach, but we could never teach the right attitude. So a lot of it was about making sure first they were sports people, And then second, that attitude was good. And usually in sport comes a pretty good attitude as well. So we had, if you visited that running department when that store first opened, you met someone who was skilled in running.
Okay.
So every department was full of people who were passionate about that actual sport. Not only passionate, played it, sometimes at ridiculously high levels.
Yeah.
We had sub 2:15 marathon runners in there.
Oh my gosh.
We had, we really had a mix. But, and the basketball department was run by a basketball coach and all this kind of thing. So that really made the difference, because then every time a customer engaged with someone in that department, it was someone who was absolutely passionate about that sport, and it just came across. And so it made the whole experience just far more authentic, and that's something I've tried to take into everything, so when we've gone into Nokia, we've tried to find the techies, and same in Apple and Ikea. Always, you've got to find people that are really interested in home furnishings and all these. If people are passionate about what they do, then it's not hard to deliver a good customer experience.
Boy,
but it's all through the people.
And yeah, what a great approach, right? So that recognize it. And the thing is, so many companies will say that. I've been at places, I've been in a lot of companies, and you'll see things like people first or passion or those kind of things. But it really comes down to what you just said, that hiring aspect of it, and focusing on that, so that if brand is X, do we have people that are truly fans of whatever that brand represents?
That was it. And, you had to watch for the people that came in with sort of swooshes tattooed all over their bodies and things like that. But it just showed they were, the people who were truly passionate. But you had to find them, because, as you say, a lot of times you get people saying, oh yeah, I want to work in retail because I want to meet people. And then you can't, every time you go to find them, they're in the stockroom or something.
That's right.
So you've got to really find the people who genuinely do. And that's the attitude part as well.
Yeah. No, I think there are days and times. I think I genuinely like people, but there's definitely I might be back in that stockroom from time to time. So I'm probably not your best candidate at times, but you're right. You got to find it.
Sometimes in Ikea, especially when I worked in Brent Park in London, there was a lot of times you would be run into that stockroom.
We all need our escape. There's actually a whole nother thread we could talk about of how you take care of folks and give them that escape. But let me kind of pivot back to almost elevating away from business specifically. But I'm kind of, you've traveled and you've lived all over the world. So you're one of the most global people I know. So I'm curious, it's such a generic thing to say, but I'm wondering, how do those experiences influence how you work and the work you do today?
I think you take all of that with you all the time, everything you've learned. You do learn, even after living in Japan, people are not so far apart, and the basic things that we all want are pretty much, and when I say things we want, I don't mean money. I mean things like love and happiness and safety and all these kind of things. These things that we all want are pretty universal. And I think you learn by going around the world that people are, everywhere you go, are universally driven by certain core desires. And the money thing, I think the money goes away very much when you travel around and see everything over the world, and you come more to, doing things you love and doing things you want to do and be in places you want to be in. These kind of things become far more important than any kind of base desire for salary and trinkets that go with it. So I think you just learn that people are the most interesting thing, to be honest, and the interactions and connections we all have, which is why customer experience or any kind of human experience and interaction is one of the most interesting things. So
that's why I'm not surprised that you've been drawn to this world. Hearing you say that, I certainly see that, and when we've worked together and that focus on the human, I know that that's also really a part of why I like being in the customer experience world, is just the stories that can be told, the experiences that can be had. And I think you alluded to this, you mentioned the trinkets part of it. I think too, with a global experience like you've had, and I've had a very limited, I'd say I'm 3% of what you may have done. But it does give you the realization that perhaps experiences are to be more valued than stuff. And collecting experiences is better than putting a knickknack on the wall or something along those lines. So I imagine that's been a part for you.
when you think about it, that's what you usually talk about. You talk about your experiences. No
Right.
one really cares so much about, what's sitting in your drive or the house you live in or things like that. I mean, and it's not, everyone needs enough, you need enough. It's just about, focusing on the right things. And I totally agree with what you said. I think the collector of experiences is a far happier person than the collector of stuff. So
there's a reason why you and I are talking then, because I've imagined we are very, not imagine, I know we're very aligned there. So I think we're kind of coming to the end of our time here, which is sad. But let me ask you, let me go back to Niketown here, because I'm kind of inspired by this international discussion a little bit here. And that is, so we think about Niketown in the UK being a global destination. Like people will come there to obviously come to London as a global tourist, but then they will target UK Niketown as a destination. How does that change the approach to the retail customer experience when it's a destination in and of itself?
Well, the interesting thing I think is going forward now, because, will these massive flagship stores stand up to post-COVID? I think that's going to be the interesting thing, but certainly prior to that, I mean, it was always your chance as a brand to, you were almost a little bit like a theme park type thing. You would come into Niketown, London, and the staff in there had to be really geared towards, you might be in retail and every day you walk out the shop floor, but every day is not the same. And for every one of these customers, it probably is their first time, and especially in a global flagship. And they have these expectations that I'm going to come into Niketown and be blown away. And so that moment of truth comes up. And do you blow them away or do you not? We were very aware with the team that it was always our chance to kind of blow people away or give them that, exceed their expectation of what they were walking into in Niketown and not just go, this is it. It had to be the interaction. Where are you from? What are you doing here? And, find out all about them and really take an interest. And, that's your opportunity as a flagship store to actually do that stuff. And I think when brands do that, it's awesome. And it would be very sad if COVID kills that kind of flagship thing. But that's always the opportunity. You're a tourist destination. And you've got to give that experience.
I too hope that COVID doesn't ultimately, when we come out of this pandemic, that we find that those kind of experiences, because even stores that I've gone to that are it's a great experience, and it certainly resonates with the brand. And I do believe there's a financial return for the brand based off of that. But you're right, it's sort of uncertain, so we don't know. Well, Cliff, we've come to the end of our time, which makes me sad, but I have learned so much from you. What I once again love talking to you about is how you bring that humanity into the experience, talking about the people that you've brought in, talking about going out and understanding the humans to understand those humans' experiences so that you can then influence what the store looks like in a Japanese Ikea. And how do you hire people who are passionate about sport, that are true? And I'm shocked at a 2:15 marathon time. I've run a marathon, and I'm not going to tell you the time, but you might just flip it on its head and you might get a little closer to what my time is. But that humanity comes through, and certainly your approach to the globe has something I've admired and enjoyed learning from. So Cliff, thank you so much for being a part of CX Passport today. Learned a ton, and eager to see what's next for you in the future.
Thank you. Thanks, Rick. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us this week on CX Passport. Make sure to visit our website, cxpassport.com, where you can hit subscribe so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, you can check out the rest of the EX4CX website. If you're looking to get real about customer experience, EX4CX is available to help you increase revenue by starting to listen to your customers and create great experiences for every customer, every time. Thanks for listening to CX Passport, and be sure to tune in for our next episode. Until next time, I'm Rick Denton, and I believe the best meals are served outside and require a passport.